If anyone had asked me a year ago, I would have said my marriage was solid. Sure, Kate and I had our ups and downs, but we'd been together for over 20 years. We'd built a family, a life that looked like the picture of happiness. But beneath that surface, something had shifted, and I didn't even see it coming. It all started with the little things. Kate became distant, almost as if she was living in her own world. She'd stare off into space or check her phone with this slight smile, quickly hiding it when I entered the room. At first, I ignored it, telling myself I was overthinking things. But then the late-night meetings began dinners, she said, with colleagues or friends I'd never met, or nights out that went on far longer than usual. One evening, as I was scrolling through some old photos of us together, a memory surfaced from just before things started to change. It was a picture of Kate laughing, a carefree look in her eyes as we enjoyed a weekend at the lake. Back then, she was present, grounded in our family and us. Now, she was like a stranger living under the same roof. Our daughter, Lily, was one of the few bright spots in this uncertain time. She was already an adult, but she'd always been close to her mom, sharing stories and secrets that only mothers and daughters do. I reached out to her, hoping she'd notice something that could help explain Kate's behavior. But Lily brushed off my concerns. "Dad, Mom's just stressed. Work's been intense. Give her a little space." Something in her voice made me pause, though. It was like she was guarding something, almost a hint of guilt. I pushed the thought aside, blaming my paranoia. But the feeling gnawed at me, and I couldn't shake it. One Friday night, Kate mentioned a girls' weekend, an excuse to recharge, she said, with some old college friends. "I just need a little time for myself, Josh. To figure things out," she told me, not quite meeting my eyes. I tried to brush it off, to be the understanding husband. But as I sat there in the silence of our home, I felt the weight of her absence pressing down on me. I tried reaching out to Lily again, asking if she'd heard anything from her mom. She sounded reassuring, almost dismissive, as if I was making a mountain out of a molehill. "Honestly, Dad, you're just worrying too much. Mom's fine." But the way she quickly changed the topic only added to my doubts. After that weekend, I noticed even more changes. Kate was still Kate on the surface, but she seemed more distant, more secretive. Her phone was always within reach, and she was constantly tapping away, hiding it every time I walked by. It was unlike her. We used to share everything, no secrets, no walls. Now, it felt like she was building one around herself. One evening, as she was getting ready to go out for yet another work dinner, I caught myself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked beautiful, her makeup perfect, her outfit carefully chosen. But there was a coldness in her eyes that I couldn't remember ever seeing before. It was like looking at a stranger. "Josh, can you give me a little space?" she said, her voice softer, almost pleading. "I just need time to think, to focus on myself. Work's been crazy, and I'm feeling lost." I nodded, though the knot in my stomach only grew tighter. What did she mean by space? Wasn't that something you asked for when you were trying to figure out how to get away? Every fiber in my being wanted to ask her what was really going on, but something held me back. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. By this point, the tension between us had grown palpable, lingering like a storm about to break. Conversations were strained, and any attempts to address the growing distance only led to arguments that left us both exhausted and angry. There was no resolution, just a void that grew wider with every passing day. The signs were all there, but I kept telling myself it was just a rough patch. We'd been through worse, hadn't we? Or maybe I was fooling myself because I couldn't bear the thought of what it all meant. This wasn't the woman I'd built my life with, the woman I trusted above all else. But here I was, questioning every word, every excuse. As weeks went by, the meetings and weekends became more frequent, more elaborate. I reached out to a few mutual friends, subtly asking if they'd seen Kate lately or knew anything about her recent getaways. The answers were vague, polite, but unhelpful. Each response added to the weight on my chest. One night, I sat alone, scrolling through old messages and photos of us, trying to remind myself of the life we'd built. I was searching for something, some proof that what we'd had was real, that I wasn't losing my mind. But all I found was a growing sense of dread. a gnawing fear that the woman I loved was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. Every night, as I lay next to her, I could feel the space between us growing wider. It was more than physical, it was an emotional chasm, one that I couldn't bridge no matter how hard I tried. The more she pulled away, the more I felt myself drifting, clutching at straws, holding onto memories that were starting to feel like illusions. Somewhere deep inside, I knew something was terribly wrong. But until I had proof, until I had something concrete to hold on to, all I could do was watch as my marriage, my family, and everything I held dear slowly unraveled before my eyes. The discovery came on a quiet Tuesday morning, one of those days when I'd convinced myself to stop obsessing and focus on anything else. But as I sat in the kitchen sipping my coffee, Kate's phone buzzed on the counter. She was in the shower, and the screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. Sam. A single line of text appeared. Can't wait for our weekend together. Same place. My pulse spiked. Every suspicion, every moment I doubted myself, came rushing back with a force that nearly knocked the wind out of me. The message was so casual, yet it had the weight of a confession. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I knew I shouldn't look, but I couldn't stop myself. I picked up her phone and scrolled through the conversation with this Sam. My heart raced faster with each line I read. Their messages spanned weeks, plans for dinners, weekends, and cryptic mentions of the place, where they could be alone. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't a colleague or a casual friend. This was something else, something she had carefully hidden. They talked about things they'd done together, places they'd been, and how much they missed each other. I could barely breathe as the reality of it sank in. Kate wasn't just distant, she was betraying me, living a double life. The woman I thought I knew was someone entirely different, someone who had lied to my face for months. Suddenly, all those work dinners and weekends away with friends made sickening sense. They were with him with Sam, and here I was, piecing it all together from the messages she had carelessly left behind. A part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom, throw the phone at her, and demand an explanation. But something inside me stopped. If I confronted her without more, she might just deny it or turn it back on me somehow. I placed the phone back on the counter, the screen darkening like a curtain closing on the life I thought I had. I needed a plan, needed time to figure out how to confront her without giving her any way out. Anger coursed through me, but it was mixed with something worse, a raw, aching sadness I hadn't expected. The love of my life had betrayed me, and the foundation of our marriage had crumbled beneath my feet. That night, as Kate sat across from me at the dinner table, I watched her closely. Every word she said, every smile, felt rehearsed, like she was putting on a show just for me. I wondered if she sensed the shift in me, the silent rage simmering just beneath the surface. She seemed completely at ease, completely oblivious that I knew her secret. After dinner, she went upstairs, and I waited until I heard the shower running again before I went back to her phone. I needed to know how deep this went, to understand what had happened to the woman I thought I knew. I opened her messages again and started scrolling through her past conversations with Sam. There were messages from months ago, messages that hurt more than anything I'd ever felt before. I wish I could see you more often, she'd written in one message. He'd replied, soon. I'll make it happen. Every message felt like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. She talked about me in passing, referring to me as him or my husband, like I was some distant obligation she couldn't shake off. Then I saw something that shattered me entirely. In one of the messages, she mentioned that she had told Lily, our daughter, about Sam. She understands, Kate had written. She just wants me to be happy. I felt a surge of betrayal, sharper than anything else I'd felt. My own daughter knew about her mother's affair and had been helping her keep it from me. I closed the messages, my hands shaking. Everything was worse than I'd imagined. Not only had Kate betrayed me, but Lily, too, had played a part. How could they both do this? The realization left me feeling empty and alone, like a stranger in my own home. For the rest of the week, I acted as though nothing was wrong, biding my time while my mind raced. Each day was a trial of endurance, pretending that I didn't know, watching them go about their routines as though everything was perfectly normal. Kate continued her charade, going off to her meetings with a casual wave and a quick peck on my cheek. while Lily looked at me with a strange mixture of pity and distance. When I couldn't bear the silence any longer, I made the decision to confront Kate, but I wanted to do it in a way that would leave no room for her to escape the truth. I arranged for a weekend when Lily would be away, giving Kate and me the space to talk, or rather, for me to finally get some answers. On the day of our confrontation, I could hardly keep my emotions in check. As she prepared to leave for yet another supposed work dinner, I stopped her in the doorway. "Who's Sam?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, though I could feel the anger boiling just below the surface. Her face drained of color, and for a moment, she looked like she was about to deny everything. But then, as if she realized it was pointless, she sighed and looked down. "Josh, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You lied to me. You lied to our daughter. You destroyed everything we had." She looked away, and I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it did nothing to soften the blow. In that moment, I knew that no explanation, no apology, could undo the damage she'd done. "I want the truth," I said, my voice breaking. "All of it." And with that, she started to talk, unraveling the story of her betrayal piece by piece, leaving me standing there, shattered and alone, as the reality of our broken marriage set in. The days that followed felt like a surreal nightmare. I'd heard Kate's words, her justifications, but none of it felt real. How could she have done this to me? I'd loved her, trusted her with everything, and in return, she had torn our life apart. I was numb, drifting through each day like a ghost. I would get up, go through the motions, but everything I did seemed pointless. My marriage, my family, all of it felt like a lie. I couldn't even look at Kate without a storm of emotions boiling inside me. Sometimes I felt fury, so intense that I had to leave the room just to keep from saying something I'd regret. Other times, a hollow sadness crept in, reminding me of the love I'd had for her, the love that now felt like a distant memory. Kate tried to reach out, to explain herself, to talk about why she had done it. She said things like, "I felt lost, Josh, and I needed something for myself." She kept using those words, needed, lost, something. But they only felt like excuses, hollow and meaningless. I had been here, giving her my everything, and yet, it hadn't been enough. I couldn't stop replaying the moment I'd found out about her betrayal, the messages on her phone, the sickening realization that my own daughter had known and kept it from me. Lily tried calling, texting, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Every word she said felt like a reminder of her loyalty to her mother over me. It was unbearable, like reliving the betrayal every time I saw her name on my phone. My nights were the worst. I lay awake, the silence of the house pressing down on me, thoughts racing. Every memory of our life together had taken on a dark edge, tainted by her lies. I found myself questioning everything. Had she been unhappy for longer than I realized? Was this just the final betrayal in a line of smaller, unseen deceptions? I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was that the woman I'd built my life with was gone, replaced by a stranger who didn't seem to care about the damage she'd done. One evening, a few weeks after the confrontation, Kate tried to bring up the topic of counseling. She suggested that maybe we could work things out, that maybe with some guidance, we could rebuild what we'd lost. But I couldn't do it. "Do you even realize what you've done?" I asked her, my voice low and raw. "You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed the family. You involved Lily in your lies. You took everything I believed in and ripped it to shreds." She had no response, just stood there, looking at me with tears in her eyes. But her tears felt like an insult. She was crying over the pain she had caused, as though she was the victim in all of this. I couldn't take it. I left the room, left her standing there, knowing that nothing she could say would change how deeply she had broken me. In the days that followed, I tried to throw myself into work, hoping that keeping busy might numb the pain. But everywhere I looked, reminders of my life with her surrounded me. The framed photos of our family on my desk, the little notes she used to leave in my briefcase, all of it felt like some cruel joke now. Every reminder was like a fresh wound, reopening every time I thought I might be healing. I thought about talking to someone, a friend, maybe, or even a counselor, but the shame held me back. How could I explain what had happened without feeling like a fool? I had trusted her with everything, built a life around her, and she had treated it all like something disposable. The humiliation was overwhelming. For the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be truly alone. I had no one to turn to, no one I could trust. Even Lily, my own daughter, had chosen her mother's side, hiding the truth from me. I was drowning in the betrayal, suffocated by the weight of everything I had lost. Late one night, sitting in the darkened living room, I thought about revenge. Part of me wanted to hurt Kate the way she had hurt me, to find someone else, to betray her as she had betrayed me. But even that felt empty. Nothing I did could erase what she had done. No amount of anger or spite would bring back the life we had, the life I had loved. I realized then that I was a broken man, left with nothing but the shards of a life I thought was real. The love, the trust, the family I had been clinging to an illusion, and now it was gone. I was left staring into the darkness, unsure of how to move forward, or even if I wanted to. For the first time, I understood that the man I used to be was gone. In his place was someone I barely recognized, someone haunted by betrayal, by pain, by a loneliness that felt like it would never end. I didn't know who I was anymore, or what I was supposed to do. All I knew was that my life, as I had known it, was over. In the weeks that followed, anger replaced my sadness. Every time I saw Kate moving around the house as if nothing had changed, I felt a spark of rage ignite in me. How could she be so calm? How could she carry on as if she hadn't shattered everything? She seemed almost relieved, as if exposing the affair had lifted a weight off her shoulders, while I was the one left drowning. The idea of revenge crept in, dark and steady, almost as if it was the only way to reclaim a piece of myself. I wanted her to feel the betrayal, to feel the sting of seeing someone she loved torn away. It was around this time that Anna, a colleague I'd known for years, reached out to check on me. She had heard rumors at work about my marriage troubles, and her messages were kind, simple, like a balm for my raw emotions. Anna was everything Kate hadn't been for a long time: supportive, genuinely interested in how I was coping. At first, I ignored her messages, not wanting to drag anyone else into my mess. But eventually, late one night when the house was too silent, I replied. She was there, ready to listen without judgment. Our conversations became a lifeline, giving me a glimpse of what I'd lost, but also of what might still be out there. One evening after work, Anna and I met for coffee. It was innocent at first, just two colleagues sharing a moment, but something shifted when she put her hand on mine. I felt a warmth I hadn't known in months, a gentle touch that reminded me of what it felt like to be seen. Her attention became addictive, filling the void Kate had left in me. The more time I spent with Anna, the more I felt in control of my life again. It was wrong, I knew that, but it was also empowering. I told myself that this wasn't about replacing Kate, but about reclaiming a part of myself that she had destroyed. And part of me wanted her to find out. I wanted her to feel what I had felt, to look at me and know that I'd chosen someone else, someone better, just as she had with Sam. I was no longer the broken man, sitting in the ruins of our marriage, but someone who could walk away too. One evening, after yet another quiet dinner with Kate where we barely exchanged words, I decided to let her see my phone, deliberately leaving it unlocked on the counter. I had exchanged a few messages with Anna that day, nothing explicit, but enough to suggest that our connection was more than just friendly. Kate glanced at the phone, her eyes narrowing as she caught a glimpse of Anna's name on the screen. "Who's Anna?" she asked, her tone casual but her expression tense. There it was, the first flicker of doubt, of fear. For once, she was the one caught off guard, the one wondering what was happening behind her back. "Oh, just a friend," I replied, giving her the same dismissive response she had given me so many times. But I could see the realization settling in, her face tightening as she connected the dots. I felt a twisted satisfaction as I watched her grapple with the idea that I was moving on, that I had someone else. For once, she was the one left wondering, left questioning if she was being replaced. Days turned into weeks, and my connection with Anna deepened. She knew about Kate, knew about my pain, and offered me comfort without expecting anything serious. I knew it was a temporary fix, a way to dull the ache, but I needed it. I needed to know I wasn't just the man who had been betrayed, but someone who could still feel, still attract, still matter. I wanted Kate to see that she wasn't the only one capable of stepping outside our marriage. And she did notice. One night, as I prepared to leave the house for a work meeting, Kate finally snapped. "You're seeing her, aren't you?" she asked, her voice laced with anger and something else hurt. "Does it matter?" I replied coolly. "You made your choices, Kate. So did I." She looked away, and for the first time, I saw regret in her eyes, a shadow of the guilt she had always brushed off. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but then fell silent, turning back to the sink, gripping its edges. I walked out, feeling a strange sense of vindication. I had wanted her to hurt, to feel the sting of betrayal, and now she did. Yet as I drove to meet Anna, a part of me felt hollow. My revenge had filled me with a temporary satisfaction, but it didn't heal the scars Kate's betrayal had left. Seeing her pain gave me some closure, but it didn't change the fact that our life together was beyond repair. I spent the evening with Anna, finding solace in her company, but as I drove home later that night, the emptiness crept back in. Revenge had dulled the ache, but it hadn't erased it. The truth was, Kate had already taken everything that mattered. I had wanted her to feel the same emptiness, the same betrayal, but now I realized it didn't change a thing. We were both damaged, both guilty, and there was no going back to who we once were. As I walked into the quiet house, I knew that my revenge, however satisfying, couldn't fix what was broken. Kate and I were strangers now, each holding onto the shattered pieces of a life that no longer existed. And for the first time, I understood that the only way forward was to let go of the anger, the bitterness, and maybe even the love I once felt. It didn't take long for word of my relationship with Anna to reach Lily. The next time I saw her, she looked at me with a mix of disappointment and anger, as if she barely recognized me. She confronted me, not about the affair, but about the way I was acting, the coldness that had crept into our home. "Dad, what's going on?" she demanded, her eyes full of hurt. "I know you're upset about Mom, but now you're just trying to hurt each other." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound more hollow than I intended. "Is that what it looks like to you?" I asked. "Hurting each other? Your mother lied to me, betrayed everything we built, and you helped her keep it from me." Her expression shifted, the anger in her eyes melting into guilt. She looked away, crossing her arms. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it was just a phase, that she'd come back to you." "A phase?" I repeated, the disbelief clear in my voice. "She was seeing someone else, Lily. She built an entire life behind my back, and you helped her keep it from me. I trusted you too." She tried to explain, stumbling over her words, but each sentence only deepened my resentment. Lily wasn't a child anymore. She was an adult who had made a conscious choice to side with her mother. Maybe she thought she was doing the right thing. Maybe she thought she was protecting the family. But the impact was the same. She had chosen her mother's betrayal over her father's trust. "Why, Lily?" I finally asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Why didn't you tell me? Do you have any idea what this has done to me?" She looked at me, her face pale, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't want to be the one to break your heart, Dad. Mom said she'd end things, that she just needed time. I believed her. You didn't think that maybe I deserved the truth?" My voice cracked, the bitterness spilling over. "You don't think I had the right to know what was happening in my own family?" Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I saw the child she used to be, the little girl who would run to me whenever she was hurt. But that little girl was gone, replaced by someone who had chosen to keep secrets, someone who had grown up believing that lies could be justified. I realized then that I didn't really know her either. She was as much a stranger to me now as her mother was. That night, I lay awake, grappling with the realization that my family had fallen apart in ways I hadn't even imagined. Kate's betrayal had been a wound I could barely comprehend, but Lily's role in it cut even deeper. She had been my ally, the one person I thought I could count on, and now even that bond felt severed, hanging by a thread that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. As the days went by, I tried to act normally around Lily, but every conversation felt strained, every glance tinged with disappointment. She could sense it, too, and I could see the way she avoided being alone with me, the way her gaze would flicker with regret before she looked away. She knew she had broken something, and I wasn't sure she had it in her to mend it. One evening, after dinner, I made the decision that had been forming quietly in my mind for weeks. I told her I needed to talk. She sat across from me, her hands fidgeting nervously, as if she already knew what was coming. "I'm changing my will, Lily," I said bluntly. "I can't trust you anymore. Not after what you did." Her face went white, her mouth opening slightly in shock. "Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, don't do this." I felt a pang of regret, but it was overshadowed by the cold, heavy certainty that this was the only way I could reclaim any control over my life. "It's not about hurting you. It's about what you chose, Lily. You picked her over me, and I don't know how to get past that. I don't know if I ever can." She was crying now, the tears streaming down her face as she begged me to reconsider, to understand. "I'm sorry, Dad. I thought I was helping. I didn't want this to happen." But her words fell flat. The damage was done. There was no erasing the betrayal, no forgetting the months of secrets she had kept from me. I had been left alone, abandoned by the people I thought I could trust the most, and now I was finally acknowledging that loss, no matter how much it hurt. When I told her I was moving out, her expression shifted from shock to despair. "Please, don't leave, Dad. We can fix this, can't we?" I shook my head, feeling a weary sadness settle over me. "I don't think so, Lily. I need to start over. Somewhere away from all of this." I didn't tell her where I was going, only that I needed space, real space, to heal from the wounds they had inflicted. The last night in that house was the hardest. I packed up what little I wanted to keep, walking through each room like a stranger saying goodbye to a place he once loved. I paused in front of the family photos, feeling an ache in my chest as I remembered the life we'd had, the happiness that now felt like a distant dream. In the morning, as I left, I could see Lily standing in the doorway, her face streaked with fresh tears. She didn't say anything, and neither did I. There was nothing left to say. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of freedom and sadness. My family was gone, torn apart by lies and betrayal. But at least now, I was free of the deception, free of the weight of holding on to something that no longer existed. The final confrontation was something I never wanted, but it was inevitable. After months of silence, Kate asked to meet. She said she wanted to talk, to explain. I didn't know what else there was to say, but against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe I wanted one last chance to understand why, or maybe I just needed the closure that had eluded me since the day her betrayal came to light. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Kate arrived before me, looking tense, her face drawn and tired. Gone was the confident, composed woman I once knew. She looked like a ghost of herself, but even that didn't stir much sympathy in me. The damage had been done. She stood as I approached, but I didn't bother with pleasantries. I took my seat, keeping my expression blank, my silence uninviting. She sat down slowly, her eyes darting nervously around the room before settling on me. "Thank you for coming, Josh," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted a chance to talk, to explain things." I nodded, not out of agreement, but to let her continue. My arms were crossed, my gaze unflinching. She shifted in her seat, clearly unsettled by my silence. "Josh," she began again, her voice breaking slightly. "I know I hurt you. I know I made choices that—" She trailed off, looking down as if gathering her words. "I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore, and Sam was. He was a distraction, someone who made me feel alive again." Her words stung, but I'd expected as much. "Alive?" I echoed, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "You needed someone else to feel alive? Was I not enough, Kate? Was our family not enough?" She winced, her eyes filling with tears. "It wasn't about you, Josh. It was about me. I needed something that I couldn't find here. I know that sounds selfish, and maybe it is, but I felt trapped, like I was disappearing." "You didn't just disappear, Kate. You destroyed everything. You took Lily with you, made her part of your lie. Did you ever consider what that would do to me?" To her. She shook her head, the tears now streaming down her face. I thought I was protecting her, that if I could just keep things together, it wouldn't hurt you. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the quiet cafe. You thought lying to everyone was going to keep us safe? How noble. I leaned forward, the anger bubbling to the surface. You used me, Kate. You used our family as a shield for your lies. And now you're here trying to salvage whatever's left of your conscience? Her shoulders shook as she cried, but I felt nothing. This was a reckoning long overdue, and her tears couldn't erase the choices she'd made. Josh, please, she whispered, her voice trembling. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I loved you. I still do. The words hung in the air, empty and hollow. I stared at her, incredulous. You love me? You have a funny way of showing it, Kate. You don't betray someone you love. You don't tear apart everything they believe in. Whatever love we had is gone, destroyed by your lies. She flinched, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. But I pressed on, needing to say what I'd held back for too long. I'm filing for divorce, I said, my tone flat, final. There's nothing left to save here. I can't be with someone who could betray me this deeply and drag our daughter into it. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Josh, no please, just don't do this. We can try to fix it. We can go to counseling, work on this together. There's nothing to fix, I replied coldly. You didn't just cheat, Kate. You lied to me for months. You lied to Lily. You turned our whole life into a lie, and there's no coming back from that. She reached out across the table, her hand trembling as it hovered above mine. I'll do anything, Josh. Just give us one more chance. I know I failed you, but we can rebuild. Please, don't throw it all away. I pulled my hand back, the coldness in me impenetrable. You already threw it away, Kate. You and Lily both. I needed you to be honest, to be loyal. Instead, you both betrayed me. Her face crumpled, and she dropped her gaze, finally seeming to grasp the depth of what she had done. I'm sorry, she whispered, the words so soft they were barely audible. It's too late for apologies, I replied. I want a clean break. I don't want anything to do with you, or the life we had together. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. We sat in silence, her sobs quiet and defeated, while I stared into the distance, feeling the finality settle around me. There was no satisfaction in this, no relief, just the stark, empty truth that my life as I'd known it was over. I stood up, my decision made. I'll have my lawyer contact you, I said, turning to leave. Goodbye, Kate. As I walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. This was the end of us, and for the first time since I discovered her betrayal, I felt a strange sense of peace. The past was behind me, along with all its lies. The day I left, a weight lifted from my chest. The decision was final. There was no going back. I had packed what little I wanted to take with me, just enough to start fresh somewhere else. Everything else was a reminder of a life that no longer felt real, filled with memories that only deepened the ache of betrayal. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, modest but quiet. The walls were bare, and the furniture sparse, but it was mine. For the first time in months, I felt a strange, liberating silence. There were no more whispers of the past, no hidden lies waiting to reveal themselves. Just the quiet of an empty room, a blank canvas that I could shape on my own terms. In the first few weeks, I threw myself into work. I took on extra projects, pushing myself to exhaustion to keep my mind off the past. The routine was a relief, a controlled, predictable environment that contrasted sharply with the chaos my life had become. Some colleagues noticed the change, offering support, but I preferred to keep to myself, avoiding any questions about what had happened. Still, there were moments of loneliness. Nights were the hardest, the silence stretching out endlessly as I lay awake, haunted by the memories I couldn't seem to escape. I had flashes of the life we once had, the laughter, the shared dreams, the feeling of waking up next to someone I trusted completely. Those memories were like ghosts, reminders of a man I no longer recognized. As the weeks turned into months, I began to rebuild in small ways. I found myself exploring new hobbies, filling the empty spaces in my life with new experiences. I took up hiking, finding solace in the solitude of the trails, The quiet rhythm of my footsteps against the dirt, the way the trees seemed to close in around me like a protective shield. Out there, surrounded by nature, I felt grounded, as if the broken pieces of me were slowly coming back together. One Saturday, I stumbled upon a small bookstore near my new place. It was quaint, with shelves overflowing with books of every genre. I spent hours there, losing myself in stories that had nothing to do with my life, my past, or the pain I was trying to leave behind. The owner, a kind older woman named Margie, noticed me returning regularly and would occasionally recommend books she thought I'd enjoy. Over time, I found comfort in those quiet exchanges, a reminder that there was still kindness in the world, even for someone like me. Gradually, I reached out to friends I'd distanced myself from during the turmoil with Kate. Some were surprised to hear from me, but their support was unwavering. They listened without judgment, without trying to offer advice, simply giving me a space to share the pieces of my story I could handle talking about. It felt good to reconnect, to remember that there were people who cared about me, who saw me for who I was, not who I'd become in the shadow of betrayal. Despite these steps forward, the relationship with my daughter, Lily, remained strained. She called a few times, but the conversations were stilted, filled with long silences and polite, empty words. I knew she was trying, but every time I heard her voice, the bitterness rose in my chest. She was still my daughter, and a part of me missed her deeply, but the wounds were too fresh to mend. One evening, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. It was from Lily, a letter, carefully written and full of remorse. She explained her reasons, her regrets, her sorrow for the role she had played in my heartbreak. She wrote about her own confusion, her misguided attempts to keep our family together, and the pain she now felt knowing she had lost me. The words were raw, honest, filled with a vulnerability I hadn't seen from her before. Reading her words, I felt a shift, a softening. Maybe forgiveness wasn't something I could offer immediately, but her letter reminded me that none of us had emerged unscathed from this mess. In her own way, she was trying to rebuild, too. I didn't respond right away, but I tucked the letter away, knowing that someday, when I was ready, I might find a way back to her. Months passed, and slowly, life became bearable. The anger faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. Kate was out of my life, and I had no interest in reconnecting. The memories of our marriage were like faded photographs, glimpses of a time that no longer felt real. I realized I didn't miss her anymore, didn't feel the sharp sting of betrayal when I thought of her. She had become just another part of my past, a chapter that had come to a definitive close. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. I wasn't completely healed, I knew that would take time, but I was finally free of the bitterness, the anger, the regret. I was no longer defined by what had happened, no longer trapped by the betrayal that had once felt insurmountable. Starting over was never something I'd planned, but it had given me something I hadn't expected. A chance to rediscover who I was outside of that marriage, outside of the roles of husband and father. I wasn't the same man I'd been before, but maybe that was a good thing. I had learned resilience, had found a strength I didn't know I had. As I looked around my quiet apartment, the place I had made my own, I felt ready for whatever lay ahead. The past was behind me, its grip loosened at last, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful for the life that awaited me, for the new beginning I'd found in the ashes of everything I'd lost.